Well, hey, you guys, welcome back to Tomes of Terror. It's my book review series. So, today we're going to be talking about a writer and filmmaker whose name is James M. It's either Watjen or Watjen. I'm not really sure, and actually, it might be neither of those things. But I'm doing the best I can. So, very sorry if I mispronounced your last name. He's based in Indiana, and his biggest influences, according to his bio, are Stephen King, George Romero, and interestingly, William Lustig, which I was like, wow, that's kind of a out there pick, but I'm kind of into it. Now, James actually reached out to me a while back and offered me an ebook of his 2024 novella called The Vermin Sleep, which is published by Nightmare Press. So naturally, I agreed that I would give it a read and give it a review. So this story is a pretty short, kind of nasty tale of revenge. It has a protagonist that you kind of find yourself rooting for, even though he does some pretty horrific things over the course of the story. Now, while the writing style tended a little bit toward tell, don't show, which, I think I've pointed that out with some other authors before, and I thought the ending was like too abrupt and probably needed more fleshing out. On the whole, this was a pretty quick and enjoyable way to kind of, get a fix of maybe vengeance based horror if you're into that. So, our main character here is a young man named Alex Fulmer. Now, as a young boy, he was severely abused by his father, who doesn't ever get a name as far as I remember. He's only ever referred to as the old bastard. Now, Alex adored his mother, who was kind of also the target of his father's abuse. Like, his dad was a drunk as well. But when Alex was 8 years old, his mother died of cancer, and so he was left with only his horrible father to take care of him. And you can imagine how well that situation probably went. Not long after Alex's mother died, his dad essentially built this bunker type cell, kind of prison cell thing in the basement and locked Alex in there all the time, day and night. He would only open the door to give him one microwaved meal a day and kind of, I'm assuming, empty the bucket that the kid was forced to use as a toilet. So the poor kid is terrified in there. He's 8, you know what I mean? And there's no window, so when the door is closed, it's pitch black in there. And as if all of that wasn't bad enough, there are also rats. He could actually hear them every night crawling around in the cell looking for, leftover morsels of whatever he'd eaten that day. Now, eventually, he gets so tired of being kept awake by the rats that he decides to kill them all. So he has this thing where he lures them out into the open, with crumbs of food that he saves, and then he basically stomps them to death under his shoes, which I know a lot of people don't like rats, but I rather like them, so I kind of found this pretty upsetting. Now, of course, the kid doesn't have anything in the cell to clean up all the rat bodies with, all the squished rats. And his dad is so furious when he sees the mess that he refuses to feed his son anything until he eats all the rats that he squished. Now, the first ones he makes him eat raw, but then his dad does him a solid and starts cooking the rat meat for him to eat. Wow, what a guy. So Alex basically lived like this for 7 months. He didn't really know how much time was passing, obviously, because he's in this hole and he's only 8 years old. But it was 7 months, as it turns out. Now, the authorities finally investigate after, I guess it was representatives from the school, started wondering what happened to him and stuff like that, because he didn't show up and, there was no... And I guess, his dad was trying to spin some yarn and they got suspicious. So Alex's dad gets arrested. Alex gets rescued from the cell, and he was sent to live with his aunt and uncle, and he kind of, after that, tried to have, a normal life at last, with maybe only partial success, I want to say. Now, once he's a little bit older, he's able to get a job on a construction site, which he actually quite likes. The problem is that one day, a couple of his co-workers call him over to show him some kitty porn, or kitty prawns, as we sometimes call it on the show, so we don't get demonetized. So these two are super into it, and it's woo, look at all this stuff we got, and it's basically Polaroids. The story is actually set in the 80s and 90s, in case I didn't mention that. So Alex is understandably appalled, as any normal person would be, Having experienced horrible abuse himself, he really has nothing but complete seething hatred and contempt for abusers of any kind, and is very, very deeply empathetic with their child victims. So Alex decides that he's going to do just what he did with those rats all those years ago. He's going to kill off all the vermin. So in this case, he starts kind of like stalking the men that have the Polaroids so he can see where the nest is, i.e. where the Polaroids are being produced, like where they're coming from. Now, once he identifies a pedophile, it's really only a matter of time before he tracks them to their house and essentially just smashes their skull in with a hammer. Now, obviously, his crimes don't go unnoticed forever, especially because he really doesn't seem to make any effort to hide the bodies, and usually leaves the incriminating photos like scattered around like on top of the corpse or whatever, like so people can see like what the person was. But despite him doing this, he's very, very angered by the fact that the media are treating the murders as, essentially a set of serial killings, which, technically they are, but they're failing to mention that all the victims are pedophiles, you know what I mean? But this doesn't stop Alex from continuing with his crusade, which he kind of comes to consider like his mission in life, I guess. Now, Alex is actually usually moving from job to job, so no one will suspect what he's up to, obviously. But after one kind of brief spell of unemployment, where he's, been stalking the dudes and everything like that, he actually scores what seems to be his dream job. And it's working as a set builder on like a local children's TV program. Now, he had always loved the theater when he was in school, and he worked building sets like in high school, like in the theater club and stuff like that. And the TV show that he'd be working on was one that he used to watch with his mom when he was a kid, which brings back pretty much like the only happy memories that he had from his childhood. Now, everybody on the set just seems to love Alex, even though he's pretty quiet and like kind of keeps to himself. And they're all like really appreciative of his hard work and his dedication to his craft and all of that. Everything seems to be going so smoothly for a while that Alex almost thinks that he maybe should stop this whole vigilante crusade against the pedos just so he doesn't fuck up a good thing that he's finally got. However, as you may have surmised, one person working on this TV show might be a candidate for Alex's smash-in hammer. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a very, very quick, entertaining read. It's probably only about the ebook version, I think. Well, the file said it was 100 pages, but there's like a lot of stuff at the end that's like the publisher putting summaries of like other books that they publish. So the story itself is probably only 60, 70 pages long. It's largely exposition based. It doesn't have a huge amount of dialogue. There is some dialogue in there, but not a lot. And we're pretty much in Alex's head the entire time. This gives us a lot of insight into his thought processes. And while you're reading it, I mean, obviously, you can perhaps condemn the way he goes about things. I mean, probably not the best way to go smashing people in the head with a hammer, you know what I mean? But most people can probably understand why he does what he does and don't really feel sorry for the dudes that he kills. Now, I alluded to this earlier, but I think the only major criticism I have is with the ending. I think that it just seemed like it was wrapped up like with too little fanfare. I kind of feel like it needed more substance because there was such this buildup of him going after all these different pedos and killing them and stuff. And I feel like because of that, there was supposed to be, I feel like it was building up to this big confrontation between Alex and the two big bads, the TV guy and Alex's dad. And I kind of feel like that confrontation didn't really amount to much. I think things were like resolved too quickly and there wasn't like much description or detail or anything. The story up to that point was great, but I feel like the end maybe could have benefited from being quite a bit longer and maybe more like drawn out and more epic, you know what I mean? That said though, I mean, if you like really brutal kind of revenge based stories with sort of morally gray protagonists, then this might be something you would really enjoy. It's short enough to read in about an hour or so. I think it took me about an hour and a half, like over a couple of days. And it really never lets up like all the way through. It's pretty violent, but like I said, a lot of it is inside his head. I think this might be this author's first published work, if I'm not mistaken. And if that's the case, then I'm actually like really eager to see what he comes up with in the future, because I actually quite enjoyed this quite a bit. So that will do it for this Tomes of Terror. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys again on the next one. Bye.